What's up, everyone? Today we are going over pretty much what it looks like in a real world scenario of what it's like to be hit with a ransomware attack. And we're just going to be going over pretty much everything that a threat actor would really be doing inside of your network from beginning to end, and then maybe some general good practices to do for cybersecurity protection, more or less. So let's just get right into this, and we're going to start with pretty much how a threat actor is going to be entering into a network to start causing all types of mayhem. Now, there are tons and tons of techniques to be able to get into a network to pretty much just deploy their malware, which would be the ransomware in this case. And one of the biggest methods is something simple like a phishing attack, which is where they just send out an email, get you to click on a link of some kind or a file, and exploit your either credentials or something like that to get into your network in some way or another. Another method is something like scanning public IP addresses, and generally what happens is that there'll be a giant list of public IPs that they'll be scanning through, and they're just trying to find something like a public facing server with a vulnerability on it that was not patched. And sometimes this can be 0-day vulnerabilities or old ones that people don't keep up with patches, and they will find a way into a network in that sense. So now those are just two simple ways to get into a network. Again, there are tons and tons of hacking techniques that we will not be getting into. I just want to go over what happens afterwards. There's a group called the Black Cat group. And I think it's a stupid name for one, but they're like Russian based and they've been all over the place. They've been hacking into banks and healthcare providers and things like that, and just absolutely causing destruction with ransomware. And you can probably find that pretty easily just by a quick search of ransomware attacks by Black Cat. So we're going to be going over generally what they do, because each group or individual, it depends if it's an actual group or not, go about ransomware slightly different. We're going to be going over how the Black Cat group does things because they've been big talk on news and things like that. So let's say that they find a way in one way or another into your network. What is going to be their first plan of action? Just so you know, people that get into your network and are basically a threat trying to do some damage of some kind don't typically do it right away. They will wait a week, maybe 2 weeks, a month, maybe even longer depending on the circumstances. And that's because they will try to gather as much information as they can before they execute anything. So the ways they do this is a lot of lateral movement, which means they're going to be getting into a server. They're going to do some kind of network scanning tool. They're going to find other servers within your network that they could get access to. And of course, there's tons of different tools that they could be using. This will usually be something like getting or compromising additional accounts, especially admin accounts, which will be targeted. So what this is going to do is after they compromise a bunch of accounts, it could be all of your accounts in your environment based on the tool that they are using. And they could also do the network scanning to find all of your servers. And they will probably go on to the next phase after that after some time. Now for the Black Hat group, they actually do basically a two-pronged approach where they will not only encrypt all of your data on all the servers that you have, they will also be trying to extract as much data as they can. So the first thing that they're going to look for is usually PII type data, which is personal identifiable information. And this is going to be things like your social security or your birthday address of all the people that could be in that environment. And this could be things like stored W-2 forms and maybe insurance forms, anything that has an employee's information on it. They will basically hunt down by using whatever scripts they have in their kit and try to get all of that information out first. And then, of course, on top of the PII, they will be looking for any other data that they can extract without being, I guess, detected. So now we've got a threat actor in the network. They have compromised a bunch of servers and credentials so that they are basically able to move around wherever they want. And they are going to be extracting as much data as they can. The next thing they will likely be doing is deploying their malware. Now, the deployment of the malware is where things start to get very, very spicy for the company that is basically being attacked. And this is where the process is pretty much what a ransomware attack looks like. After the malware is deployed into a server, usually it just spreads to as many devices as it possibly can, which is all servers, all user computers, anything that it can find, and start encrypting all of the data on there. This will usually compromise like things like your C drives and any SMB shares and things like that. It depends on the type of script, but just let's assume that everything in your servers are now encrypted. So what is there left to do from an IT perspective? How do you defend against this, or what are your next steps here? Best case scenario, you guys have some like ransomware or cybersecurity insurance for your company, but let's assume that you just don't have anything and we're going to deal with ourselves, just so I can explain to you guys what the process actually looks like. So as someone in IT, say you get onto a server that's been encrypted, you're going to notice a bunch of weird stuff. You're not going to be able to use anything. All your files are encrypted. It's just an unoperable server. But the ransomware note is going to be usually stored in like a text file or a pop-up of some kind when you get onto the server, and it's going to give you a list of instructions and information about the cybersecurity attack, because that is what the threat actor wants. Now, a ransomware note is something that contains all of this information for you. Things like how much the ransom is going to be, and now the ransom is usually accurately depicted based on the company that they attack. They will get information on your company and then the revenue of your company or profits, and then try to give you and they will give you a realistic ransom, usually on the earnings of your company. And you can honestly think of this, to them, it's like a business transaction. Sure, it's ransom and it's illegal and this and that and the other, but it really does come off like a business transaction. So you'll have an amount to pay, and they'll tell you some kind of instruction on how to contact them. Usually it's like an Onion website that's fully encrypted, and you can pretty much chat back and forth in that sense. And this is where like you start to bargain. You can discuss what the terms are, how long you have. You can even get the ransom lowered. That's a real thing. They will lower it if you bargain with them, but they'll generally give you a deadline of what you have to do, when you have to meet it, and how it's going to be accomplished. Along with the instructions on how to contact them and the ransom amount, they will also give you the information about what kind of data they have stolen and if they plan on releasing it publicly if you don't pay. And then you can also, like, again, a business transaction, you will be something like, hey, how do I know you guys actually got all this data from us? And they will send you a list of some kind of all of the files that they've stolen, and basically just prove to you that they did steal all of this data. And it's the same thing with the decryption key. If you do end up paying the ransom, it's kind of like, maybe they will give you a decryption key, maybe they won't. They will tell you that they will give you a decryption key and not release your data publicly if you do pay the ransom. And oftentimes they really do that. And they treat it almost like a professional ransom. Best way to explain it. A professional business transaction ransom that is completely illegal. So they will generally try to give you your decryption key, but don't think that they have to. Of course, they can just say they will. You pay the ransom and you get no decryption key and your data is still gone, which is, of course, pretty much the worst case scenario if you have no backups and recovery in place. So let's say you don't pay the ransom and you have a recovery place in play. What kind of recovery are we looking at, and how do we actually apply that to whatever company that you're working at? So you'll have typical protection, basic security practices in your environment, hopefully. So these security practices are things like your multi-factor authentication for all of your users. Then you're going to have phishing tests to make sure that there's user training involved, where they know what it looks like to have phishing emails come through, so their credentials, of course, aren't getting compromised or any other information. Of course, you would want to do a lot of security audits, maybe pen testing, go through third-party vendors if you must, and make sure that your vulnerabilities are patched up and you don't have issues in your environment in general. And you'll want to do other things like least privilege access. So anyone that has access to certain systems, make sure that they don't have access to everything and it's not wide open. There's a lot of different types of practices. So outside of those little things here and there, we're going to be really discussing on your recovery and backups. Because let's be honest, if you do get encrypted and you got this far, the biggest thing is going to be how you are going to recover from it. It's going to be the most impactful part of this whole process because it could determine whether you can totally ignore the ransomware attack or you have to actually comply with them. Now, discussing types of backups, I'm going to talk about 3 of them. There are more. There's lots of third-party vendors that give you all types of cybersecurity solutions, but I'm going to go over basically the 3 simplest but most used or well-known types of backups and recovery solutions. Number 1 being snapshots. Now, before anyone from IT is going to yell at me saying that snapshots are not backups, because that's a huge thing with IT. Lots of people have a ton of arguments on whether snapshots are backups. If you take snapshots of virtual machines, it is a form of backup in my opinion, but it's not something that you should do as protection. It's something you should do before you run a server upgrade so you can kind of revert back if you have any issues. It's not a good cybersecurity solution because snapshots will easily just either disappear, get deleted, get encrypted, things like that. It is not a proper backup solution. It's just a quick recovery if you mess up a upgrade or something like that. But it is still really good to have snapshots just in case, it's one of those just in case things. It's the easiest form of backup. You just go ahead and click on a snapshot, recover your virtual machine, and voila, you're done. So the first proper protection that I can really think of is something like physical backups. So you would basically just take physical disks and back up all your data onto them. And then if you ever need to recover, it's just basically a manual, boring process of recovering data disks that you backed up to manually. Of course, backed up data disks manually that you have stored away is not encryptable because it's no longer on the network. Generally, that's the best way to think of it. And since this process is a little bit outdated, it's not the cheapest or most convenient way to do things. There's pretty much better solutions now. Things like Veeam. So Veeam is a backup solution. It's between free and paid. Of course, you would probably want to do the paid version because it's a lot more robust and provides a lot more capabilities. So basically what Veeam does is take all of your servers, either on-prem or virtual, and create backups into a Veeam server, which is a separate entity. And this is a really, really good place to have your backups for a lot of different things, not even just virtual machine servers and storage. Now, there is one caveat to this, is Veeam servers are very well known, used pretty much all over the place. It's one of the top brands for backup solutions, which also makes it a very big target. If that Veeam server is not fully secured or immutable, what's going to happen is it's going to be compromised. So when the group or threat actor deploys this malware, the Veeam server is most definitely going to be targeted because it wants to destroy your backups. And that's one of the biggest things with ransomware malware, is that it's going to try to find and encrypt all of your backups as well. So having just snapshots and just Veeam, probably not the best solution overall. It is a good starting point for sure, because the next steps might be a little bit more expensive because you have to create different types of storage accounts and go through different types of vendors to be able to get all this stuff. So the next thing I am going to talk about outside of Veeam is going to be an immutable backup solution. Now, this is usually done through a third-party vendor. And what they do is, so this is usually done through a third-party vendor, and what an immutable backup solution really is basically a storage where you take all your data, put it into an immutable backup, and that means that it cannot be changed for a period of time. That means you can't write to it, you can't delete, you can't do anything. It's just immutable. That's essentially what it means. And this pretty much provides the most robust backup solution against ransomware and other types of malware that could be compromising your data. You would usually set up some type of schedule to write to the immutable backup, and then afterwards, for whatever period of time, it becomes that unchangeable, can't write to it, can't edit it, can't do anything. And when all of your servers are getting encrypted, this immutable backup is untouched because it can't be touched. And that is the whole point to it. Now, of course, there could be some kind of vulnerabilities in whatever system that you are using, but that is the same case with everything. So the biggest hope is that there is no vulnerability, or it's not known, or you have enough protection where they can't get into these immutable backups in one way or another, and that will be your main recovery solution. There's other things out there, of course, things like Azure Backup, where it's like a cloud backup solution, which is also a really good tool, and tons of more stuff. You can find tons of different things, but these couple solutions are what I would recommend, especially as a starting point into a recovery solution after being hit with some kind of malware or ransomware. So I'm really hoping this video sheds light on what it actually looks like to be ransomware, where maybe you don't fully understand it because you'll see it in the news. This company has been hit with ransomware and lost all their data, and it's now public information. You might get an email about your social security or your passwords being out on the black or the dark web rather. So if this video helped you guys learn and understand how ransomware attacks actually happen, how your private information may get out onto the dark web, things like your social security have been compromised or your passwords to your accounts, this is generally how it happens. A big company gets hit with this ransomware, they pull all this data and then publish it on the dark web. So if you guys like the video and want to see more like this, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions on this. I'd be happy to answer anything. And of course, if you have any ideas for me for my future videos, that would be awesome too. So thanks again for watching, guys. I hope to see you in the next video.